Aguayo. Got it. And I should say that we are starting our recording as well. Thank you, Hunter. My name is Jose Aguayo. I am the Senior Science Associate for the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice. And I am one of the people here, I'm one of the scientists here who is in charge of providing technical assistance to the communities that we work with. So with that being said, I'll pass it on to you, Stephen.
Morning, everybody. I'm Stephen Lester. I'm the science director here at CHEJ. Been here for a long time and have worked with some of you over the years and worked with lots of community folks over the years. And so I'm excited about having an opportunity to share some of our experiences and some of our ideas about technical assistance. Teresa, I think you're next. Teresa? You want to just say who you are and how you fit?
Hi, sorry, I was listening to my daughter. My name is Teresa Mills. I'm a community organizer and the small grants manager at CHEJ. Welcome, everyone. Good to see all of you.
And last but not least, we'll pass it on to Hunter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hunter Marion. I'm the junior community organizer for CHEJ, and I'll be the one kind of secretly running the meeting in the background.
Hunter makes this meeting tick. So thank you for that, Hunter. So great. So now I'll give you guys a very brief definition, I guess, if you want to call it, of what technical assistance is within the context of what CHEJ does. And what it really boils down to is our ability to provide you with science interpretation, with things like data analysis, with things like synthesis of reports from government organizations such as EPA or state health departments. So that ability to synthesize complex reports, sciencey reports, if you want to call them, and be able to explain what they are to the community. Now, in terms of that, we kind of break it down into two chunks. One is individual questions that you as a community member might have that comes to us with a specific question such as, why is benzene bad for my health? Or what can it do to my kids, right? Those kinds of questions where we can come in and give you a straight kind of answer about what are the risks associated with a given chemical or something along those lines. The other type of technical assistance that we kind of work to provide is a much more in-depth analysis, what we like to call our letter reports. And these have to do with, with a more robust organizing strategy in place. Teresa will talk about it a little bit more further down the agenda here. But these are the kind of reports, in-depth reports that we can write about a particular whether it's a particular chemical or a particular industry for that matter, that you as a group can use to inform your organizing work. I'll let Stephen talk a little bit more in depth of what that is, but really it's a tool for your organizing work to base around. I don't know if you're going to add anything to that, Stephen.
Yeah, that's a great foundation. I mean, truly most of our work is, as Jose described, is helping people understand information and telling them what's important about it and what's not there and what's missing from it. And through some case studies, I think we'll help highlight some of those limitations in information and how that really is important in people understanding and gaining confidence in what they know and what's being said to them by government or the corporations. But all that said, there's another piece of our work, which is just as important as the science and understanding the science, and that is figuring out where the science fits into local organizing work. I wish I had a nickel or a dollar, I guess these days, for every community group that at one point said to me, well, if I just got the right information in the hands of the right people, they would do the right thing. Well, those of you that have been around a little bit know that just doesn't work that way. But that's how people often start out and often stick to those kind of roots. But the role of science in these situations is really to help people figure out how to get where they want to go, how to achieve their goals. And science is a tool to get you there. When we used to do trainings a number of years ago, we would pose this question: is information power? I mean, how many of you think information is power? I can't see very many faces, so it doesn't work so well on Zoom. But
why don't you answer that question on the chat? Let's see if you can put your answer. Do you think that information is power? Let us know in the chat.
you can do that. You know, I see a few thumbs up, and
I see a few yeses. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in fact, information is really not power. You get power from figuring out how to use information. A report that tells you the most powerful information is just a report on your desk. But if you have a strategic plan on how you're going to use that, how you're going to educate people, how you're going to recruit people into your group, how you're going to put pressure on the governor or pressure on the state agencies with that information, that's how you gain power. And so we're going to talk a bit about that as well, because that's one of the things that I learned when I first got involved. And it's one of the very first things I learned. I was hired, I got involved in this kind of work when I was hired by the state of New York to be a science advisor to the residents of Love Canal. That's how I met Lois Gibbs, our founding director, and got involved in all this kind of work. And one of the things I took away from that experience is that while I could make the best arguments with the best science that I could think of and have available to me and take it to the state health agency people, and they would blow me off. They would say, thank you very much for your comments, we appreciate it. And they would do nothing. But I gave that same information to Lois and the community group, and they had a public meeting or they had a protest, and they used the same information to create public pressure on the state. They got everything they wanted. Well, maybe not everything, but they got a lot of what they wanted. And so it's just another example of how, and there I could give you another half a dozen examples if we had more time, but not just Love Canal, but other situations where science, the information itself didn't change anything. But when people took it and effectively used that same information, it made a world of difference. And again, we'll talk about some of these in some of the case studies.
I think, Stephen, that's a great kind of segue to this particular kind of question that I also wanted to cover, and that is, you know, what science can tell you and what it cannot, right? I think you just covered a great deal of what it cannot, right? On its own, a report, like you said, it can have the best science, it can have, you know, the most logical perspective of seeing a particular, you know, or of seeing data, for example, right? But if it's not used, if it's not applied, if it comes just from a scientist, if it comes from you or if it comes from me, right, and it's not used by the people to push for what they want, then it's worthless, right? It will lead to nothing. So I think that's a very important distinction to make, that information on its own isn't power. It's what you do with that information that matters, right? So with that being said, some of the things that the technical assistance can do for you is let you know what to organize against, right? Think about an excellent example perhaps would be asbestos, right? Asbestos and lung cancer. It is very well established now that lung cancer is associated very, very closely with asbestos exposure. So, but that is a rather rare example in toxicology out there, right, where you can almost definitively match a particular disease with a given chemical or exposure. So back to the question of what science can do is it can inform your organizing work, right? It can tell you what are the dangers that are present to you, your family, and your community. But that's kind of where it stops, right? It then falls on you as a community, as a resident, as a concerned resident, to do something with that information, right? And I think with that, I would like to ask Teresa, our community organizer, to give you guys a short perspective from her point of view as to how, technical assistance fits in the work that she does as a community organizer. So Teresa, if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you, Jose. After 30 years in this, working on environmental issues, I've found many groups, organizations that, as Stephen said, believe that if they have numbers that are bad enough, someone will take the issue and run with it. And speaking from experience with not only my first state environmental group, but many other grassroots groups across the country, that just doesn't work. You have to be persistent. Yes, we need to use science, but we can't just depend on science. If Stephen or Jose were to write your organization a letter, the first thing I would ask is, what are you going to do with it? I'm not going to ask Stephen or Jose to spend time, doing a technical letter unless I know what you're going to do with it. Unless Stephen and Jose knows what you're going to do with it. That gives them the ability to dig a little bit deeper. If they know that you've got a plan, and really, we can't live our life without a plan. We have a plan just to cross the street. How are we going to cross the street? One step at a time, and that's what you need to do in organizing. Science is a tool. Science does not necessarily win your issue. Science is a tool. So if you're working with an organizer, either Hunter or myself, that's one of the first things we will ask you. When you ask for technical support, what's your plan? What's your plan? You just can't take a letter and put it on the shelf. You just might as well take that report and put it on the shelf because you're not using it to help your group organize. So
I think that's a key perspective that you bring, Teresa, because the way that the workflow, I guess, at least the way that we at CHEJ handle it, is our organizers will go and start the work. Right? You, Teresa, Hunter, would connect with the communities that are in need, and once they know what they want as a community, right, as an organization, once they know how they're organized, what their roles are, then we can start incorporating the work that Stephen and I do to kind of, again, to inform that organizing, to move it forward, to give it the credibility, right, that science can bring to you, so that they can't completely dismiss you as just hysterical housewives, like Lois put it once, right? But it's also important to note that science on its own cannot fight your fight, right? For every scientist that we have on our side, for every Stephen, for every one of myself that we have, industry or government will have 10, 20, right? And you never want to enter in an argument where, Stephen said this versus, EPA scientists said this, because that's not the battleground you want to fight. The battleground you want to fight in is organizing out there, right, in the grassroots level. So with that said, I think we've covered sort of the basics of what we wanted to to let you know in terms of the technical assistance that we do. We can move on to some case studies. I don't know if we have any questions on the chat either. We'd be happy to answer those. Hunter, I don't know.
Let me jump in.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Let me jump in here, Jose, and Hunter, you can check the chat in the interim. I just wanted to add a little addendum to the last comment you made, Jose, about dueling, what we call dueling experts. And government loves dueling experts. They love nothing more than to have an expert working with the community talking with the expert working for the company or the expert working out of the government agencies. Because as long as the experts are talking, the language is jargon, the language is esoteric, the language is somewhere else, and you as the community is sitting in the background and often losing power and losing the attention of the decision makers in the media and everybody else. So never play that game. Avoid it like the plague. You really, and the other thing, one of the other things that we do as scientists for CHEJ is we don't speak for people. We don't speak at public hearings. Our reports are always written to the community leadership, and the community is the one who actually takes that information and decides how they're going to use it. And that's often Teresa or the organizer's job, is to help work with you guys to help you understand, okay, once we get this report, well, how are we going to use it? What are the best ways? What's the strategy? How is it going to help us achieve our goals? And so, if I'm speaking before a city council, which takes me to our first case study, and it's a nice segue actually. But I won't get to there until I go back to Hunter and see if we have any questions in the chat. But as long as I'm speaking or some expert speaking, then community's not, and that's not a good place for you as a local community leader. So Hunter, is there any questions that came up related in the chat that we need to address now?
No, not yet. I was addressing your information hit.
So let me go to a case study that illustrates some of these issues. We've been working and still are working with a group in upstate Wisconsin, in Wausau, Wisconsin, where they have a facility, an old window treatment company. They treated windows with pentachlorophenol and some other chemicals to preserve them, and I guess they were sold on the market. And so a lot of the waste products from that manufacturing were burned in the backyard of the facility. So a lot of dioxin was generated at this company facility, and that got into the neighborhood. And so after some time, we got contacted by the local leadership there saying, well, we've got some dioxin testing around the site, around the town here. Can you help us interpret the results? So Teresa was involved with them and spent some time talking with them. And eventually I got involved, and they sent me some of the test results to look at and to review. Well, I looked at that, and then at the same time, the state of Wisconsin Toxicology Division, or Department of Health Toxicology Division, did an assessment. I mean, the community raised some concerns, they raised some pressure, and that got the state toxicology department involved. So they came in and did an assessment. Well, they came out with their assessment with quite a lot of fanfare. And those of you that know dioxin, which is the most potent carcinogen ever tested in the United States, well, they did their public health assessment without considering the cancer risk for dioxin. I mean, they just missed it, I guess. I don't know. I mean, this is where you get very cynical after a number of years about how could they possibly miss the most obvious health concern with dioxin, cancer, in their public health assessment, but they did. And so I raised that initially as the biggest problem. He said, there's other issues, but he says, you can't go past that one big problem here. So the community got quite excited. And so they said to me, okay, we need you to come to speak, or to come to town and speak before the city council. The city council is trying to decide whether, and Teresa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there was a park or something, and they were trying to decide what to do with the park, or whether it needed cleanup. I'm not more sure of the details, but they wanted me to speak before the city council. And I said to Teresa, when she first approached me with this request, I says, I can't do that. If I speak to the city council, or if I now go to the media and start speaking about this situation, then all the attention is on me. I become the focus of all of this problem. And it's not the leadership of the community that's doing that. So I said to Teresa, who then in turn talked to the leadership of the group and said, no, Steve's not going to do that. We're happy to meet with you to help you understand this issue and what you need to say to the media, what you need to say at the public at that city council hearing. And you're the one who needs to do it. And so, Teresa, I'm going to turn this over to you, and why don't you pick up the ball from this point and talk about what happened next, or whatever makes sense.
Well, what happened next was we did have the communication with the group. Stephen made very clear what the problems were. They were understood, the citizens understood. So they were able to take our report and go to city council, and the city council paid attention. The city council did go in and do further studies of the park and the creek. They found relatively high levels of dioxin. It necessitated a cleanup. The leadership went on, two of the leadership went on to become city council members themselves. They were so successful that they felt so empowered, and they've made a huge difference. They went on to look at another site in their community, a 3M facility. So they've just been going gangbusters, but it was because we gave them the confidence that they could take the information that Stephen provided, put it in their own words, and be confident when they stood in front of city council. And just recently, they were involved in a press conference with the governor of Wisconsin, who announced that they were going to be filing a lawsuit against 18 industries in the state of Wisconsin for PFAS contamination. So this group has gone on and used the lessons that we gave them, or the information that we gave them. And I mean, they've just been, like I said, going gangbusters. So they've been very successful, but it was sometimes pulling teeth. It started out as a one-man band, a one man, until I finally said, look, until you have a group, there's not really much we can help you with. We can educate you, but educating you is not really helping your community. So, he got a group together, and they've been going, because we were able to show them the difference. They saw the difference between one person doing this and then a group. They didn't even have a group name. They formed a group name. That makes a huge difference. So it's strategy. It's your, in the state of Ohio where I am, you really can't say a strategic plan. That, everybody freaks out when you say a strategic plan. But what we call it in Ohio is an action plan. People want to take action. They just need to know what actions to take. And the science is part of the action. It's not the whole action.
Yeah, and Teresa, I mean, I think you kind of put it so well, that even though we're focusing this particular training on technical assistance and how it can help you, right? It can never be divorced from the organizing work, right? And especially in our field, one cannot go without the other, right? Because again, if you have the science work on its own, then we're in that dueling experts kind of scenario that Stephen put, right? And it's one of the reasons why it's a little counterintuitive that Stephen declined to go and speak to the city council in this particular instance. But the result was that it forced the community, the organization there, to understand, with Stephen's help, right, the technical aspect of the dangers that they faced, right, and then organize towards stopping that, and then empower themselves through that process, and then moved on, like you said, to tackle other issues in their community as well, right? Whereas if Stephen had gone and just talked, he may have been dismissed, he may not have, but certainly the community would not have been as empowered or as educated as they were, and they certainly would not have gone on to tackle other issues around them, right? So it's a snowball effect. I don't know, Stephen, if you want to talk anything more about this, but I have another case study that I can bring up as well.
No, I think that's a great place to sort of stop with this example. If you want to do another case study, we can. Otherwise, we could just open it up to Q&A. But I think that the lessons from that example are really powerful in terms of how science not only is a great tool, but with the way we work with it, and the way CHEJ operates with the science is to help people become empowered by it.
For sure.
do
And I
that.
think a much more recent example of that is in an ongoing work that we're doing up in Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, it's in New Jersey, where we're working with a community near a Superfund site that contaminated the area with arsenic and lead. And there's been some work by the local health department to clean up that area. However, they're setting cleanup standards for lead, for example, that are, in our opinion, a little too high. But probably the worst part is that they're arguing that certain residences in the area affected which have extremely high levels of lead, cannot attribute the lead in their in those properties to the Superfund site, which was an old pesticide manufacturer that used the lead in its pesticide. So I don't know how the state health department can be so confident that the lead in these properties did not come from the Superfund site, even though they're within close proximity. So in any case, that was kind of our technical analysis of the situation. And the community there at first wanted to, kind of like in the previous example, to pass the ball to us. They were like, okay, yeah, how can we help you guys fight this, right? And that's when we kind of came in and explained, it actually is the other way around. We are the resources for you. We are the ones that can help you understand how lead can affect you, right? How arsenic can affect you, but we can also help you organize as a community group to see what you want to do about this. And that created some tension within them. However, that ultimately led to them getting together, and they're in the process of kind of setting up this quasi community organization. But that realization that they cannot rely on us to fight their fight, right, made them come together to use the information we gave them to try to fight for their health, right? So I think that's just another example of how technical assistance informs and ultimately pushes people to take ownership of their local fight. I did see a couple questions in the chat. Let me see. Hunter, could you help us with that?
Yes, Dorothy Pina, she asked a really good question on, do you help groups come up with action plans?
Teresa, that may be a question for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a great question. And Teresa, you should answer that, address that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At the end of this, they will be putting my contact information up. So if you want to have a conversation about an action plan, absolutely, I would love to help you.
Okay, is there any other question?
Yes, next question from, actually, Dorothy Pina has her hand up. I think we should address her.
Sure, do you want to go ahead, Dorothy?
I was just wanting to kind of expand on that, in that, like, understanding your example of that, you know, the isolated incidents with the window manufacturers, like here where I am in the Gulf Coast region, it's dominated by industry. So it would be a little bit more difficult from my perspective to try and get people on board when it's essentially what provides everyone for jobs. So when we speak about industry and how it's affecting our populace, sometimes people are unwilling to even speak with us because it harms their way of living or making a living. So being able to strategize with understanding our demographics, how intricately tied industry is to the people and their livelihood here, and knowing how to create a plan of action based on that information would be really useful. So I just wanted to use that as an example so that other people can relate it, but thank you.
And I think we all go through that, Dorothy. There's, you know, on my very first battle was the country's largest dioxin producer was a Columbus trash burning power plant. And, you know, there were almost 400 people 400 families that depended on that plant. But it was the largest dioxin releaser in the country, you know, a mile from my home. So, you know, I was not willing to back down. And it ended up, they closed the plant. You know, almost 400 families lost their income. You know, we never celebrated, but the workers did thank me in the long run, because as I had always said, they deserved better jobs. And so it's each case has to be handled, you know, with kid gloves, because it can impact, you know, families. So I totally understand where you're coming from, Dorothy.
Moving on to this next question, Josh Lama. He's asking if we work in sub-Saharan Africa. I can answer that question. Sadly, CHEJ does not leave the US border. So I don't know if y'all can point any resources that work in sub-Saharan Africa, but at the moment we do not work outside the US.
Right. We do have a lot of guidebooks on our website that have organizing information and issue-based in terms of some of the science and technical stuff. So we do have a lot of great resources that you can download and are available for free. And, you know, obviously, you know, to the extent we can communicate over the phone or by email, we will try to do that as well.
I will also put a link in the chat to our resources library to find all of those papers. I think Ken Sutu, I hope I said your name right. You're raising your hand, so I think that they should go.
Thank you very much. My question is, in our situation, we have many different industry in our community. And so when we find something nobody wanted to admit it's coming from them, they always say, okay, how can you prove this is from us? So have you handled situations similar to this? Thank you.
Yes, I'll take the first cut at this, Jose. Yes, we have dealt with many communities like that, where there are multiple sources of industries and companies polluting an area or a community. And so it goes back to how we address that. It goes back to working with the organizers around what is your goal? What is it you want? You know, do you want information about the chemicals in the air? Do you want information about the health effects? Do you want information about how much each company's putting in? I mean, it's a slow process. There's no simple answer to how you manage it and how you take it on. But it begins with a conversation around with the local leadership about, okay, you know, what is it that you'd like to see change in this area? And Teresa, you might want to add a little to that. I don't know. Or Jose.
Yeah, I can add a little something to that. And Ken, so in terms of a technical assistance perspective, right? Multiple sources often contribute different, some of the same, but often different chemicals as well, right? And that leads us to the topic of cumulative exposures, right? How different chemicals interact with each other within your biological system, right, within a person. And toxicology is such an early stage of understanding in terms of that. We can barely tell what one chemical does to your body per se, right? And even there, the tools that we have to evaluate that are very limited. So again, coming from a science perspective, if you have multiple sources of pollution, it is extremely hard to tell A, where it's coming from, right? And B, what exactly are the effects gonna be on you, on your health? So again, that goes back to what Stephen was saying, right? That at that point, it stops becoming a science, a technical assistance issue, right? Because we cannot tell you with a definitive answer, it's coming from that particular industry, or the health effects are definitely going to be this, right? We cannot tell you that, but we can tell you the potential health effects that can come from it. And then with that information, it goes back to your organizing strategy. What do you want, right? Do you want the permits from all the surrounding facilities to be reduced, right? For example, or is there one facility that is the obvious worst offender, right? Are you targeting that facility to close or to lower their air permits, right? That again, because science is so limited in telling you or in giving you the answers for these things, it becomes an organizing question about what do you want that can give you relief.
Right, let me take a shot at this as an organizer's point of view. When industries start tattling on each other, I love it. I love it because they're just giving you ammunition. And I always say, when one industry is pointing their finger at another, 3 fingers are pointing back at them. Okay, so it's pretty. I mean, we had the situation in my very first battle. We had the incinerator, we had a sewage incinerator, we had, asphalt plants, we had all of these different things. And they kept saying, no, it's not us, it's them. It's not us, it's them. So we took that to the agencies and said, here, these companies are admitting that this is going on. You need to decide, you need to test to see what this actually is. And sometimes they can actually fingerprint chemicals. And so they can know where certain chemicals come from. So like I said, when they start pointing their finger at each other, I love it because they're giving you ammunition. You just need to know how to use it.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have a question from Richard Scheel. Richard is asking, any suggestions for how to grow a local grassroots organization? Richard lives in a community of 14,000. The community demographic is heavily families with school-age children and working parents. It is very hard. They're very busy and hard to get their attention. There's no local media. They have gone door to door for organizing, but they tend to get ignored or no one answers the door. They tried social media, but it's not really working that well. And whenever they speak at city council, all the city council members tend to be in favor of the big project, which they have found to be a known PCB and other contamination site.
Well, I mean, Cesar Chavez always said, you organize one person at a time. And he was a United Farm Worker. So, and I know that's hard, but, set your sights on, if you have 4 people, each of those 4 people should be able to bring in at least 1 or 2 more people. So that's 8, that's 12. So, we're not necessarily asking or telling people that they need, thousands of voices. But once you start getting more members, your voice becomes stronger and becomes stronger. And if there's something that we could do, Richard, to help, to give you, to help empower your group, or to help, I don't want to say give you credibility, because you give yourself credibility, but, we can verify, what you're thinking, what your concerns are. So I would, encourage you to be in contact with us so we can learn a little bit more about the issue and give a better, more thorough answer after we learn a little bit more.
Going to the last question in the chat. Martha Hunter is asking, do you have experience with landfills? I have a group that reached out with a major landfill expansion in their community. Our group doesn't work on landfills, but trying to help get some connections in the community. I can answer that one. I'm actually one of the coordinators for the landfill working group at CHEJ. We do have one, and almost everyone here has had experience working or fighting a landfill.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we would be glad to connect with the person that asked that question, because we have resources and experience from other organizations, grassroots and larger organizations as well, who are fighting landfill expansions, landfill permits, So the idea for that working group is to kind of be able to connect you with others who are in the same fight, so that you can share experiences, things that worked, things that didn't work. So absolutely, I have Teresa's contact information, but Hunter, maybe you can put yours on the chat as well, so that they can connect with you for that.
Yes, of course.
And with that, let me actually we'll keep on taking questions for sure, but let me pull up Teresa's contact information. Second, easiest thing, I'll just share my screen for this if I can.
Well, I hope you're getting the message that we want to share with you all, which is that while science is critical and you need it to win, you can't win with it alone. You need to really have a plan for how you use that information. And so it's been our experience since my days at Love Canal that's how successful groups win, is by using information like the science in a strategic plan, and they're persistent and they put a lot of time and energy in it. Organizing is not easy. It would have been so much easier for me to just talk to that city councilor, because I know all about dioxin. I would have been, take a little time to prepare, but it would have been relatively easy. Instead, we put hours into working with that local group. But that has paid such dividends, and that is what we are here to try to do. That's our goal, is to sort of empower groups and to help groups be better at being groups. So,
Do we have time for 2 more questions?
Yeah, do we have more?
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
So Eric is asking, do you have any strategies for bringing communities together that have been indoctrinated to not trust each other?
Well,
Claire, you're
again,
going to be
Teresa, I think you'd probably be the best person to answer that.
Well, that's different, but the one thing, it's difficult, but the one thing I always remember, and this is a lesson I learned from Lois Gibbs. And she always has a saying, is you don't have to invite people to dinner, but you have to work with them. And I have taken that strategy myself, because I do have problems with some state and national organizations that I feel don't, really help the grassroots enough, but I have to work with them. So do I have a strategy? Just be careful. Make sure you stand up for what you want. Do not get suckered into something that you don't want. Stand your ground. And Stephen has probably run into this situation several times himself. So Stephen, you have an answer for that?
No, there's no good answer to that, other than you can't give up on your neighbors and fellow community members. It's like Lois says, you don't have to, go out to dinner with these folks, but you do need to involve people and share information with people. And one of the other things that I learned a long time ago in terms of one of those little organizing tidbits is that you don't need 20 or 50% of your neighborhood working on a fight to win it. You need about 10%. So you just need enough people who care about the issue that that bring you together. And it doesn't have to be everybody. And there'll be people who will oppose you and people who think you're crazy, especially in this day and age. It's certainly gotten people who got more vocal. But you can certainly be an effective local group by being clear on your goals and sharing information with everybody.
Right. And you could also think about, is there one particular group that is seen as that everybody tends to work with? And maybe you could do like a round table, or what I always call a bull session, and have that organization kind of mediate a meeting between the differing groups to see if you can come to a conclusion. That's always helpful too. So.
And Claire has her hand up, so you can go, Claire, now. You're on mute. There you go.
Hey, hello. I'm Claire Leahy, live in Lee, Massachusetts, and we do have a plan and an organization. Teresa was wonderful, helping a few of us work out what I was calling a strategic plan, but now I know it's an action plan. And I feel like we're nearing the end of our small grant that we received and are reaching the goals that grant had. And I feel like we've had a lot of exposure to the community with different forums and Riverfest and so on. Oh, by the way, we're fighting a PCB dump planned just out maybe at 3/4 of a mile from my home. And I recently, what we've been doing is going to finally, we got a board of selectmen that agrees with fighting the PCB dump. But we recently have been reaching out now to our Board of Health and our Conservation Commission to try to get them to understand how dangerous this is. And that's seeming to be quite a task. So now as we work with the Board of Health, there's another little obstacle that's been thrown into it, or maybe it's more ammunition, and that is that we found that an old mill that lies even closer to my house has been leaking dioxane, and it's found all the way down to the brook right beside my house. So what I'm thinking now, one of the gals that helped me write the grant, we're looking now at doing some Zoom meetings with different neighborhood groups to try to get across what the dangers are. And that's where we'll really need help, I think, somebody just asked on our website the other day, I see all this jargon, all these reports we're getting from EPA and they're passing them on to us and GE, but you've got to put it into layman's words. And just, I'm an intelligent woman, this person is saying. We do have a website where we get a lot of questions. So I feel we've got a lot of organization going, but we haven't. It's the same people all the time. And maybe a core group of 30 or 40 people, but still we're not reaching the general population. Now, the next plan, just real quick, is besides trying to organize, getting people, maybe 10 people in each neighborhood on a Zoom meeting and trying to get those technical materials together so they really can understand them. Maybe we might need slides and so on. But other than that, I'm just thinking personally of going before the town health board and saying, hey, I'm being exposed to dioxane right beside my house, and now the threat of PCBs, and the river runs in front of my house. I think I need some testing of my yard and my air. We have never done that because we figured that would be the end of ever being able to sell our house. So there's the economic side of all this that we also want to get out to people in the community. So there's several aspects, several goals, the economic side, the health side, the environmental side. There's a lot of aspects, and 2 organizations now that are leaking. So I probably need, if you think that would be a good idea, to just go personally before, as probably the person most heavily affected by this, because there's an aquifer under the planned dump and under the leaking dioxane dump, which DEP has given us figures on, which I can send to you for your analysis. I forget where I was going. So we're trying to get a plan together that makes sense using technical data, which is exactly what you're talking about, what we're trying to figure out.
Well,
Thank
Sure. Thanks for that question, Claire. And I think part of what we might be able to do is, obviously you're in touch with Teresa, but I would suggest that you have a conversation with Teresa about maybe having involving Jose and I, one or both of us in another further conversation about all of this, so that we can just be more on what's going on there, and then maybe there's some things we can contribute that can help you.
And I have to apologize to Teresa for not getting back to her on a little update on what's happening, but things have been moving along nicely, Teresa. Thank you.
Excellent.
And I just wanted to address, I know we don't have a lot of time. I know a couple people raised their hands. We're going to get to you. But I know on the chat, Gretel asked a quick question about whether CHEJ would be able to help model estimate emissions from an airport expansion. That would require GIS and maybe some modeling software. We don't really have that capacity. However, what we can do is, if you give us your contact information, Gretel, I could get you in touch with people from the Environmental Protection Network, which is a group of either retired or ex-EPA employees with different technical assistance capabilities, who may be able to help you with that, depending on their availability. So Gretel, again, if you can give us, shoot us an email or put your contact information here in the chat, I can get you in touch with them. Now, I haven't been keeping track of the people that have been raising their hands. If you could check on that, please.
It is Linda and Gretel. Linda went first, so it's Linda to Gretel.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I want to say thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to be in this meeting today. I would definitely need this kind of support from you guys. So we are in the Tucson, Arizona area. I've worked with Stefan and I've also worked with Teresa in the past, and we've done a lot of work here in our community, and we continue. Our organization has now been mobilizing with another chemical, PFAS, as you all know. And one of the things that we were pushing for, even when Lois came to Tucson, was that they would investigate the PFAS issues here at the TARP, which is a Superfund site. They did. They found the chemicals in the system. And now what we're hearing, and there's talk that they shut it down, put it back up, upgraded it, but now they're saying they're going to shut it down. So we want to somehow have your support, if it's possible, to move forward and continue to push for that shutdown. I don't think that it's ever gonna fix the problem. I mean, we've been dealing with this since 1940s, and this continues. There's a lot of environmental racism in our area, and people, we keep saying enough is enough. We're doing all the right things. Our members and our city councils, they've done more to divide us and to disempower our group, whether it fits to one way or the other, but they've done a lot. They've come against us. We've gone through a lot of uphill EJ battles. So we're still here and we're still organizing. Now we're mobilizing a new chemical and the shutdown of the TARP. Are you guys interested in supporting us in this going forward?
I think that we would be interested in supporting you guys, and I think the way to go forward is to have a conversation with Teresa as to what that exactly means and how we can do that.
Thank you.
Sure. Good to hear from you, Linda.
Yeah, you guys.
And now Gretel.
Hi, thanks. And Jose, thank you for that offer to connect us with the EPN, but we're actually already working with them. And one of the consultants we've been working with has well, part of the issue with this airport is, of course, it's in between two towns, and it's the wealthier, larger, more influential town which is pushing this expansion, and the smaller town to the other side is a designated environmental justice community. They have some of the highest rates of asthma in the state, and they have absolutely no power or political influence over this decision. So what do you have? I'm wondering if you have any other recommendations for how we could use or create a scientific argument against the kind of contribution to the asthma rates. You know, how would, you know, we're trying to find a way to use science meaningfully to just raise the questions better. And I don't know if you have any other suggestions on how we might go about doing that, given the situation.
So Gretel, yeah, the one thing that comes to mind, and Hunter might be able to expand a little bit more on this, there are a couple EPA resources, such as the EJ Screen database that can give you a very, very, you know, not specific, but you know, somewhat generic overview of the given pollution sources in any part of the country, right? So you can use that to kind of create a map almost of the state of that particular town, you know, of the EJ town. You can tell, you know, whether how it compares, I should say, to the rest of the US, to the rest of the state, for that matter, in terms of certain sources of pollution. Hunter, you might be able to expand a little bit more on that, how she can use that.
Yeah, you could, there's actually 3 options to the EPA. You can use the EJ Screen. One of the things I warn about you is if you're in a very rural area, EJ Screen tends to not work that well. There's also the TRI Toxics Tracker. I particularly like that one if you want to know the specific toxins or chemicals within like a facility. Again, this one doesn't go by area, it goes by actual EPA regulated facilities. So if there are a couple of, if there's like a concrete plant or something, you can look it up. If there's nothing like that, especially since it's just being in development, it probably wouldn't be registered yet. But if there's like, if you can find certain other polluting places around, you could use that. And then there's also the ECO database, which is similar to Toxic Tracker, but for ECO, what it does is it's like, it takes specific facilities that have failed in EPA compliance, and it gives you like a detailed breakdown on what laws it's breaking, its permit history, has it had a permit? So you can use all 3 of them in combination to get a good idea of like your area. And
Greta, have you filed a petition, an EJ petition with the US EPA?
No, we haven't done that yet.
Okay, that's something that I would probably recommend, because I don't know that with an airport, I don't know that they're required to file TRI. So that might not be helpful. It would be helpful with other industries that are around if they're required to file, but I think I would consider filing a petition with the US EPA, Washington, Michael Reagan.
Okay, that's a good thing to look into. Yeah, we're running up against a lot of FAA versus the EPA.
Right,
situation.
exactly. So yeah, if you would send me an email, we have just petitioned here in the state of Ohio. We have just petitioned Michael Reagan and the Department of Justice ourselves, so I could share our letter with you.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks to everyone.
And I think we're out of time. I know if some people still have questions, please feel free to email Teresa. I'm going to add my email to the chat as well, so that anybody with any further questions can reach me as well. Let me see that I got it. Yeah, that looks right. So please feel free to do that. Reach out to me or Teresa. Yeah, thank you very much for attending. We will share the recording of this session with everybody who attended as well. There are a couple people that asked for resources. We'll also send those to you. So with that being said, thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Hunter. Stephen had to hop off. And we hope that this was informational and helpful to all of you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.